So, good day to each and everyone. This is the part 2 of Bandura's theory. So, let me read the definition of self-regulation. So, self-regulation is when people have high levels of self-efficacy, are confident in their reliance on proxies and possess solid collective efficacy. They will have considerable capacity to regulate their own behavior. Bandura believes that people use both reactive and proactive strategies for self-regulation. That is, they reactively attempt to reduce the discrepancies between their accomplishments and their goal. But after they close those discrepancies, they proactively set new and higher goals for themselves. People motivate and guide their actions through proactive control by setting themselves valued goals that create a state of disequilibrium, and then mobilizing their abilities and effort based on anticipatory estimation of what is required to reach the goals. The notion that people seek a state of disequilibrium is similar to Gordon Allport's beliefs that people are motivated at least as much to create tension as to reduce it. So, kung ang tao is hataasan nila self-level of efficacy, kung baga confident na sila sa nila kakayahan, ngan ininera na own behavior is ginaregulate na nila. So, si Bandura na niniwala na ang tao nagamit tuduhan na strategies in life, which is the reactive and proactive strategies. So, initially, individuals work to bridge the gap between their current achievements and their desired goals. They reacting to the differences. So once na ma-achieve nila ito na mga goals, instead na makontento sila or mag-set makontento sila, they are proactively set even higher aspirations for themselves. So continue lang naging pupush nila limits nga nag-strive pa sila for more. These strategies, it's a continuous process of growth and improvement driven by both reactive and proactive elements. Diri sila maara makontento. Diba? May kasi ng mga tao na bagan diri sila nagsisettle for less la. Diri sila nagsisettle diri sila na kontento kung nanon era na achieve na mga goals, kung may da sila ma-achieve na goals, diri pa ini siya, gusto ko pa maghataas, gusto ko pa mag-set for more, gusto ko pa mag-settle for more pala, diba? May mga tao nga mga siton, so ansya niya yung tinatawag na reactive and proactive strategies in life. So, let's move on to external factors in self-regulation. So, external factors affect self-regulation in at least two ways. First, they provide us with a standard for evaluating our own behavior. So, standards do not stem solely for internal forces, environmental factors interacting with personal influences shape individual standards for evaluation. By precept, we learn from parents and teachers the value of honest and friendly behavior. By direct experience, we learn to place more value on being warm and dry than on being cold and wet. And through observing others, we evolve a multitude of standards for evaluating self-performance. In each of these examples, personal factors affect which standards we will learn, diba? But environmental forces also play a role. Second, external factors influence self-regulation by providing the means for reinforcement. Intrinsic rewards are not always sufficient. We also need incentives that emanate from external factors. An artist, for example, may require more reinforcement than self-satisfaction to complete a large moral. Environmental support in the form of monetary retainer or praise and encouragement from others may also be necessary. So, the external factors in self-regulation. So, ginsasaring din na external factors may affect our self-regulation sa duduwa na paagi. First, napoprovide sila sa aton sin standard para ma-evaluate naton kalugaringon na behavior. So, ang mga pamamantayan ay dirila nagtitikang sa internal na pwersa. So, ang mga halimbawa di ka naman dili sa kapaligiran, sa aton environment, sa aton pagkikipag-ugnayan sa mga personal na mga impluwensya, iton kumbaga iton ang naguhubog or naguhulma sa aton individual na pamantayan para sa kung sa Tagalog pagtatasa. So, sa pamamagitan sa mga aral sa aton mga parents, sa aton mga teachers, kumbaga gintutot do nira ang halaga sa honest ngan kaibig-ibig na pag-uugali, kumbaga ang maupay na pamatasan. So, sa pamamagitan sini, so di ba sa environment gap nato na adman na kumbaga mas pipiliw naton, example di na mas pipiliw naton na maging mainit at tuyo kaysa sa pagiging malamig at basa, di ba? Example yan kumbaga naton heat index, di ba, natigda ko. So pag mapaso nga ni gipipili nato ran mahagkot. So kung mahagot nga ni gipipili naton mapaso because of the environment. So sa pamamagitan giapsan observation sa iba, kumbaga nagkakamayadakit mga individual perspective. Oo, nagkakamayadakit mga iba-iba nga pamantayan ngan pagkita sa naton kalugaringon. So sa kada usa sa mga halimbawa na sugad sini, ang mga personal na salik sa aton is nakakaapekto kung ano man ang mga pamantayan na aton nababaruan, pero may mga papel gihapon na may mga salik sa kapaligiran gihapon. So panduha is ang mga pangawas na salik, kumbaga nakakaapekto gihapon sa pamamahala sa natong kalugaringon in a way na nagahatag git way para sa pagpapaupay, pagsasaayos kung sa Tagalog pa. Diri sapat ang likas na gantimpala na naton mga kinahanglan. Kailangan gyap natin mga incentives na tikan sa mga panlabas na salik. Halimbawa kung ikaw may trabaho, kumbaga diri la sweldo ani mo gusto makarawat, gusto mo pasin iba, gusto mo pasin mga incentives na makakapag-satisfied sa nimo pagka may daan sa trabaho. So halimbawa sang artist, kumbaga nangailangan siya sin mas higit pa. This is my example na kumbaga kung ikaw may trabaho, gusto mo pa may mga incentives, kumbaga diri ka masetela sa sweldo, gusto mo mga incentives. Ang siya ini na sa kulong artist is nangailangan ng higit pa sa pagsasaayos kasi sa niya kalugaringon na kasiyahan para matapos sa niya ay para masatisfied aniya gusto. So ang kapaligiran is na suporta sa aton sa pag-inganyo o pag-udyok tikan sa iba na aton mga kinahanglanan pa. So let's move on to the internal factors in self-regulation. So external factors interact with internal or personal factors in self-regulation. Bandura recognizes 3 internal requirements in the ongoing exercise of self-influence. Number 1 is self-observation. Number 2 is judgmental processes. And number 3 is self-reaction. So let's move on to self-regulation through moral agency. People also regulate their actions through moral standards of conduct. Bandura sees moral agency as having two aspects: doing no harm to people, and 2. Proactively helping people. Our self-regulative mechanisms, however, do not affect other people until we act on them. We have no automatic internal controlling agent such as conscience or superego that invariably direct our behavior toward morally consistent values. Bandura insists that moral precepts predict moral behavior only when those precepts are converted to action. In other words, self-regulatory influence are not automatic but operate only if they are activated. A concept of Bandura calls selective activation. So, dito naman sa self-regulation through moral agency, so si Bandura is may nakikita na two aspect. Moral agency as having two aspect. Number 1, doing no harm to people and proactively helping people. So, doing no harm to people, kumbaga diri ka manalabos sa ibang taongan, proactively mabuli ka sa ibang tao. So, ang aton self-regulative mechanism, however diri nakakapikto sa ibang tao until himuuntay ni sa ira. So, wari kit automatic na internal controlling, wari kit automatic na internal controlling sa aton kaliguringon. Kumbaga ang konsensya or superego, kumbaga nagda-direct din sa naton behavior toward morally. Ngan, kumbaga nakainit din sa aton unconscious ng superego. So, Bandura insists that unmoral kuno na percepts is na predict moral behavior kun ito nga percept is na convert na sa action. So, in other words, ang self-regulatory is nag-influence diri na automatic pero nag-ooperate siya if they are activated. So, this concept gintawag ni Bandura selective activation. So, maya di table, ini nga table kumbaga aniya di pinakaigbang moral justification, palliative comparison, euphemistic labeling. So, minimizing, ignoring, or misconstruing the consequences. Dito naman sa pinakaubos ng box, may di naka-state na dehumanization, attribution of blame. So, reprehensive conduct is may arrow siya nga di sa detrimental effects. Nga detrimental effects is may harm di sa victim, diba? So, after the victim, by the na displacement of responsibility, diffusion of responsibility. So, how can people with strong moral beliefs concerning the worth and dignity of all humankind behave in an inhuman manner to other humans? Diba? So, the answer is that people do not ordinarily engage in reprehensible conduct until they have justified to themselves that morality of their actions. By justifying the morality of their actions, they can separate or disengage themselves from consequences of their behavior, a concept Bandura calls disengagement of internal control. So, and disengagement technique allows people individually or working in concert with others to engage in inhuman behaviors while retaining their moral standards. For example, ang mga politician is nagko-convince sila sa mga constitution, labi na pag mga hanalan mga kumbaga nagko-convince sila the constituent of the morality of wars. Thus, wars are fought against evil people who deserve to be defeated or annihilated. Let me read this first. Selective activation and disengagement of internal control allow people with the same moral standards to behave quite differently, just as they permit the same person to behave differently in different situations. So, selective activation nga ng disengagement of internal control is kumbaga nag-aalaw siya sa tao na may da same moral standards nga mag-act or mag-behave differently. Halimbawa, ang tao is nag-behave siya differently sa different situation. Kung halimbawa itong situation is malain, negative situation, so mag-react ka at negative something. So kung ini naman positive, mag-react ka at positive sa na situation. So, figure 17.2 illustrate the various mechanisms through which self-control is disengaged or selectively activated. First, people can redefine or reconstruct the nature of the behavior itself by such techniques as morally justifying it, making advantageous comparisons, or euphemistically labeling their actions. So second, they can minimize, ignore, or distort the detrimental consequences of their behavior. Third, they can blame, dehumanize the victim. Fourth, they can displace or diffuse responsibility for their behavior by obscuring the relationship between their actions and the effect of those actions. So let's move on to dysfunctional behavior. Bandura's concept of triadic reciprocal causation assumes that behavior is learned as a result of a mutual interaction of the person, including cognition and neurophysiological processes, the environment including interpersonal relationship and socioeconomic condition, and three behavioral factors including previous experiences with reinforcement. Dysfunctional behavior is no exemption. Bandura's concept of dysfunctional behavior lends itself most readily to depressive reactions, phobias, and aggressive behavior. So, dysfunctional behavior is kung may tutulo na ang result sa mutual interaction is first, kung ang tao kung is na-include nila ang cognition nga neurophysiological processes. Pandua naman is the environment, nag-include na nga the interpersonal relation and socio-economic condition. Pantulo naman is behavioral factors, nag-include nila ang past or previous experiences with reinforcement. So, ang dysfunctional behavior is one exemption. Ini nga kan Bandura concept of dysfunctional behavior, kumbaga naglalend mostly sa depressive reactions, phobias, and aggressive behaviors. So, let's come to depression. So, high personal standards and goals can lead to achievement and self-satisfaction. However, when people set their goals too high, they are likely to fail. Failure frequently leads to depression, and depressed people often undervalue their own accomplishments. The result is chronic misery, feelings of worthlessness, lack of purposefulness, and pervasive of depression. Bandura believes that dysfunctional depression can occur in any of the three self-regulatory subfunctions: 1. Self-observation, 2. Judgmental processes, and 3. Self-reaction. So, we all know that depression is a famous nga kumbaga sakit sa natao, di ba? So, kung ikaw na tao is hataas talaga imo expectation sa nimo kalugaringon, danay pag na-fail ka, kumbaga ginihimo mo na ini nga pinaka most problematic, kumbaga pinsan mo ikaw na most problematic person in the whole world. Kumbaga gintuturing mo na ini na gin-question mo na ning kalugaringon, na wala ka na Di question man nimo pagiging worth it nimo kakayahan, di ba? So di na nagtitiklangan an depression, nade-depress ka na pag pininsar, di ba? May mga sugad siton. So si Bandura, kumbaga natuod siya na ini na dysfunctional depression is kumbaga na-occur ini sa tutulo na self-regulatory subfunction, which is the self-observation, judgmental processes, and self-reaction. So first, during self-observation, people can misjudge their own performance or distort their memory of past accomplishments. Depressed people tend to exaggerate their past mistake and minimize their prior accomplishment, a tendency that perpetuates their depression. So, di ba, through self-observation gihapon. So ang tao kumbaga nami-misjudge nira kalugaringon na performance or kumbaga ginbabalik nira past accomplishment. Halimbawa sugod sini kay san una wari ko manupaya sanglit sugod sini halimbawa nabagsak kung san una pala talaga ginupay ko na sugod sini di ra kun tamen nugad, di ba? That is one example. So ang mga depressed people kumbaga an era past is kumbaga na-exaggerate na sila their past mistake and minimize their prior accomplishment. A tendency na nag-perpetuate sa nera depression. So, second, depressed people are likely to make faulty judgments. They set their standards unrealistically high so that any personal accomplishment will be judged as a failure. Even when they achieve success in the eyes of others, they continue to berate their own performance. Depression is especially likely when people set goals and personal standards much higher than their perceived efficacy to attain them. So, di ba? So, ini nga klase sa depression yot, may dalawat sini nga. Kumbaga, nag-set sila goals or personal standards na hataas pero anira na ating na level sa nira efficacies tubtub la sabot nga pero gusto nira magataas pa, di ba? May mga sugod sini nga mga tao na bagan na kamay ada sila faulty judgment, nagsiset sila standard na kumbaga di ko la sa pagkuhan is may mga tao talaga na mga kuamba mga parang hambog something na kaya ko pa humataas so kasi diri ko kakarato nga tubtublak but nga diri ko kakarato nga tubtublak bus sanglit pag diri nga nira na reach ito na era karuyang na-depress na sila di na nasulod na an pagiging depressed sa tao. So finally, the self-reaction of depressed individuals are quite different from those of non-depressed person. Depressed people not only judge themselves harshly but they are also inclined to treat themselves badly for their shortcomings. So may mga tao na kumbaga ini nang tinatawag nga self-reaction. May mga tao naging sasala na nira kalugaringon nga sugod sini nga mao niton kay ka may nagayakan nga katanga-tanga mo diri mo kaya ini abuton sugod siton kumbaga ginjudge na nila kalugaringon question na nila kalugaringon ngan ira na nagiging kontra nila kalugaringon, di ba? Kumbaga ginsasala niya kalugaringon sa tanan ng mga shortcomings nga ninanabusan niya kinabuhi. So, after the depressed, let's move on to phobias. So, phobias are fears that are strong enough and pervasive enough to have severe debilitating effects on one's daily life. For example, may snake phobias prevent people from holding a variety of jobs and from enjoying many kids of recreational activities. Phobias and fears are learned by direct contact, inappropriate generalization, and especially by observational experiences. They are difficult to distinguish if the phobic person simply avoids the threatening object unless the first object is somehow encountered. The phobia will endure indefinitely. Once established, phobias are maintained by consequence determinants, that is, the negative reinforcement the phobia person receives for avoiding the for producing situations. For example, again, if people expect to receive aversive experiences being mugged while walking through the city park, they will reduce their feeling of threat by not entering the park or even going near it. In this example, dysfunctional avoidance behavior is produced and maintained by the mutual interaction of people's expectancies, belief that they will be mugged. The internal environment, the city park, and behavioral factors, their prior experiences with fear. So, maram naman kasan phobias, this is a common kuan liwat, kumbaga, di gan matuturing na sakit, pero kumbaga, yeah, bukan baga, nagiging behavior man, di ba, ang phobias, kumbaga, sakit na kada ini. Oo, and phobias is, kumbaga, na trauma ka na sa nga thing, halimbawa, nahadlo ka sa mistake, kumbaga may phobia ka na, di ba? So, maintindihan naman talaga ito natin kung what is phobias. So, aggression. Aggressive behaviors, when carried to extremes, can also be dysfunctional. Bandura contended that aggressive behavior is acquired through observation of others, direct experiences with positive and negative reinforcement, training or instructions, and bizarre beliefs. So, aggression. So, gintakan naman natin kung ano aggression, aggressive behaviors. Gintakan naman ito natin sa aton previous topics. Yeah. So, once established, people continue to aggress for at least 5 reasons. Adina. First, they enjoy inflicting injury on the victim, positive reinforcement iton. So, they avoid or counter the aversive consequences of aggression by others, that is negative reinforcement. So, they receive injury or harm for not behaving aggressively, punishment iton. They live up to their personal standards of conduct by their aggressive behaviors, self-reinforcement, and they observe others receiving rewards for aggressive acts or punishment for non-aggressive behavior. So, Bandura believes that aggressive actions ordinarily lead to further aggression. This belief is based on the now classic study of Bandura, Dory Ross and Sheila Rose 1963, which found that children who observed others behaving aggressively displayed more aggression than a control group of children who did not view aggressive acts. In this study, the experimenters divided the Stanford University nursery school boys and girls into 3 matched experimental groups and 1 control groups. So, si Bandura na believe na an aggressive action, kumbaga ordinary lead to further aggression talaga. These beliefs based on the study of Bandura. So, si Dory Rose and Sheila Rose, ambot magbugto rin or magpatod, which found out that ang mga children na na-observe nila is nagbe-behave sila aggressively, displayed more aggression than sa iba na mga students na di rin nila nakikita na may aggressive acts. So, sini nga experiment or study, and divide the Stanford nursery school boys and girls kumbaga into 3 matched experimental groups and 1 control group. So, let's move on to therapy. According to Bandura, deviant behaviors are initiated on the basis of social cognitive learning principles, and they are maintained because in some ways they continue to serve a purpose. Therapeutic change, therefore, is difficult because it involves eliminating behaviors that are satisfying to the person. Smoking, overeating, and drinking alcoholic beverages, for example, generally have positive effect initially, and their long-range overseas consequences are usually not sufficient to produce avoidance behavior. The ultimate goal of social cognitive therapy is self-regulation. To achieve this end, the therapist introduces strategies designed to induce specific behavioral changes, to generalize those changes to other situations, and to maintain those changes by preventing relapse. So, an therapist made a first step in successful therapy is to instigate some change in behavior. Halimbawa, kung ang therapist is able to extinguish fear of height or in a previously acrophobic person, then change has been induced and that person will have no fear of climbing a 20-foot ladder. So, sa more important pala level of therapy is generalize the specific changes. Halimbawa, again, kung an acrophobic person is is not able to ascend a ladder, pero that person will be able to ride in airplanes or look out windows or of tall buildings. Sa ibang therapies, this induce change and facilitate generalization. Pero in time, the therapeutic effects are lost and the person reacquires the dysfunctional behavior. So, ining relapse is particularly likely kung ang tao is are extinguishing maladaptive habits such as nag-smoke siya or OA or overacting. And most effective na therapy reaches the third level of accomplishment, which is maintenance of newly acquired functional behaviors. So, Bandura 1986 has suggested several basis treatment approaches. The first includes overt and vicarious modeling. People nga nag-observe live or film models is kumbaga performing threatening activities often feel less anxiety and are then able to perform to some activities. So, sa ikaduwa naman na treatment mode is covert or cognitive modeling. So, kung ang therapist, ginatrain niya ang patient na mag-visualize models, magpa-perform siya para sa ma-forsam ang dito na behavior. Overt and covert modeling strategies are most effective, however, when combined with performance-oriented approaches. So, pantulo naman nga therapy is a third procedure called enactive mastery. Requires patient to perform those behaviors that previously produced incapacitating pairs. So, enactment, however, dili siya ordinarily na first step sa treatment. So, ang patient is typically begin by observing models or by having their emotional arousal lessened through systematic desensitization. So, nag-involve in siya extension of anxiety or kahadlok through self-induced or therapist-induced relaxation. So, sini nga systematic desensitization, ang therapist ng patient is kumbaga mag-work together para ma-place ang first nga situation or an hierarchy from less to most threatening patient. So, while nagre-relax, the least threatening behavior and then gradually move through the hierarchy until mag-perform na ang most threatening activity, diba? So, all the while remaining at a low state of emotional arousal. So, si Bandura is demonstrate niya na each of these strategies pwede maging effective. And ito ng pinaka-powerful na ginagamit sa combination sa kada tagsa. So, si Bandura luwat na tuod nga ini nga mga rason for effective can be traced to a common mechanism nga ma-found out of each approaches. So, namely, cognitive mediation. So, kung ang tao is nagamit cognition para ma-increase niya self-efficacy, ito ma-convince na sila para mag-perform sa mga magkuri na mga task. So then, in fact, they become able to cope with previously intimidating situation. So let's move on to related research. The social cognitive theory of Albert Bandura continues to produce a great deal of research in several domains of psychology, with the concept of self-efficacy alone generating several hundred studies a year. Self-efficacy has been applied to a wide variety of domains, including academic performance, work production, depression, escaping homelessness, coping with terrorism, and health-related behaviors. We focus on how self-efficacy can be applied in three important social domains, namely promotion of health, bullying, and world population growth. So, self-efficacy and diabetes. So, one of the ways in which Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory has had the greatest impact on the daily lives of many individuals is in the promotion of health and the prevention of disease. So, Bandura himself has written about the usefulness of this theory for encouraging people to engage in healthy behaviors that can increase overall well-being, health, and longevity. So, ang siya naton. So, naging sikat talaga ang kan Albert Bandura social cognitive theory ay nagaaghat siya sa mga tao na maging healthy, ngan maging iwasan ang mga sakit na maaari na magpalipusan kinabuhi sa usa nga tawo. So, recently, William Sacco and his colleagues studied Bandura's construct of self-efficacy as it relates to type 2 diabetes. Diabetes is a chronic disease that requires very careful management, including a special diet and exercise regime. Diabetes presents people with a variety of physical challenges, but it also is associated with significant mental health challenges. And then, the prevalence of depression among those with diabetes is double that of the general population. One of the hallmark traits of depression is a lack of motivation, and given the strict diet and exercise plan, diabetes patients must adhere to this is particular problematic for those trying to manage diabetes. So the less patients adhere to this disease management plan, to greater their diabetes symptoms become, which creates a downward spiral with negative implication for physical and mental health. So we all know naman na diabetes is the most common disease nga nakikita naton sa mga tao na mahilig sa mga sweets and all. So si William Sacco and his colleagues is kumbaga yung pag-aralan nila kan Bandura Bandura's construct of self-efficacy. So, Sacco and his colleagues therefore to explore the role of self-efficacy as a variable that could increase adherence to the disease management plan and decrease negative physical and mental health symptoms. Their prediction was the greater level of self-efficacy patients felt, the more likely people would be to adhere to their disease management plan, and therefore the better patients would feel. So, in order to test their prediction, Sacco and his colleagues recruited a sample of adults who had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So, nagkuha sila usa na adult para i-test nila or maging sample nila nga na-diagnose si type 2 diabetes. So, and participants completed self-report measures for how much they adhered to their diet, exercises, glucose testing, and medication plan. A measure of depression and a measure of self-efficacy, especially tailored to assess how much self-efficacy they felt with regard to managing their diabetes. So additionally, ang participant is completed a measure of frequency and severity of their diabetes symptoms, and their body mass index or BMI was computed based on data from their medical records. So, ang results in a study is clearly demonstrated kung gaano ka-important ang self-efficacy sa era management of chronic disease. So, higher levels of self-efficacy were related to lower levels of depression. So, increased adherence to doctor's order and hamubo nga BMI and guti nga a fewer and decreased severity of diabetes symptoms. Given these compelling results for the importance of self-efficacy, the researchers further examined its role in the management of diabetes. So, sa ibang analysis, si Sakuan ng iya colleagues na admanira na ang BMI is positively related to depression, and that adherence to doctor's orders was negatively related to depression. But might self-efficacy play a role in these relationships? To answer this question, the researchers conducted more complex analysis, and what they found only further highlighted how important it is to feel as though you have a sense of control over your health when it comes to managing disease like diabetes. So, ang self-efficacy, kumbaga, diretso ini nga responsible sa both relationship between sa BMI and depression, and the relationship naman between the adherence and depression. So specifically, pag nagamaydan high BMI ang tao, kumbaga nafe-feel niraan less self-efficacy, which in turn led to increased depression. Kumbaga nagtiturn na ini para humataas ang depression sa tao. So conversely, being able to adhere to the disease management plan served to increase self-efficacy, and it was this increased a sense of control over the disease that was responsible for decreased depression. So, let's move on to moral disengagement and bullying. So, when we do bad things, we can convince ourselves that our behavior really was not bad or immoral. So, kung nakakahimok it bad things ko, no? Kung bagagin ko convince naton an atong kaligoringon nga diri marot na natong batasan. Kumbaga, manipulate na kalugaringon diri I'm good. Bisa nakahimok baya na butang. So, was that bad or immoral? So, that the normal standard of morality do not apply to us in that situation. This is what social psychologists call moral disengagement. So, Bandura has very recently published a book entitled Moral Disengagement, How People Do Harm and Live with Themselves. In his book, sa book ni Bandura, Bandura reviews decades of research, anecdotal evidence, and intervention efforts grounded in his theory of self-regulation through moral agency. So, si Bandura is meda siya book na gin-publish pala niya which entitled Moral Disengagement, kung paano ang tao na kahimo harm ngan nabubuhi sa nira kalugaringon. So, one area of pressing social concern relevant to moral disengagement is that bullying among youth. We commonly think of bad or aggressive kids as lacking in moral reasoning that enables them to understand right from wrong. But recall that Bandura agreed that self-regulation of our behavior involves more than reasoning. So, moral behavior is enacted through a series of self-regulatory mechanisms that enable children to develop a sense of moral agency. So, ang bata, di ba, hindi rin maaram sa ira ginhimo kung tama ba ito or mali. So, this developed sense of moral agency is not static within us. static within us. However, there are many psychological and social processes through which self-restraint or self-sanction of bad behavior can be disengaged. This is how bullies can treat others aggressively without ever experiencing a sense of its moral wrongness. Bandura described mechanism of moral disengagement that fall under A. Redefining or cognitively restructuring one's behavior in a positive light. B. Minimizing the consequences of one's role in the harm. C. Disregarding or distorting the consequences of one's harmful behavior. And finally, stripping the victims of human qualities or blaming them for the harm done to me. Bandura and his colleagues na-develop nila ang self-report skills para ma-measure nila ang pinaka-prone sa moral disengagement na nag-capture sininga mechanism. So, sininga skills have been modified for use in a variety of populations. So, Bandura's mechanism or an moral disengagement nga na niya theory nga efficacy is both individual and the collective level provide an excellent foundation for creating intervention efforts to put an end to bullying. So, ini nga naging theory ni Bandura kumbaga inigyapan para mag-stop gyap ang bullying. Nga nag-create siya sin intervention efforts para ma-stop ang bullying. So ini na ambitious anti-bullying program na ginhimo ni Bandura, ginhimo niya sa Norway para ma-address ini nga issue sa mga individual na mga estudyante, mga kag-anak ngan sa mga classroom and schools, and even sa entire community level. And evaluation of the program showed excellent results. So ini bagan nagamay siya excellent results ni ginhimo ni Bandura. So social cognitive theory goes global. So Albert Bandura's most recent work is taking social cognitive theory in brain new applied direction to find solution to global problems such as soaring population growth. In collaboration with the Population Media Center, a groups who bring entertainment education for social change to Africa, Asian, and Latin America. So, si Bandura has helped to produce serial dramas that encourage evidence-based positive change behaviors for television and radio audiences to model via observational learning. So, ini nga mass media is productions have been shown to improve viewers' perceived efficacy to determine their family size, increase the use of contraceptives, and promote the status of women in family, social, and educational life. So, newer work in this collaborative team is exploring the efficacy of similar serial drama to improve environmental preservation practices. So, how Bandura great is, diba? So, yung social cognitive theory, kumbaga naging global na siya, nagamay na siya sa mga TV para may baran sa mga tao, and ini na mga ini na kan Bandura social cognitive theory very kaupay kay gimpo-promote niya ang status ng babae sa pamilya ngan sa social ngan sa educational life gihapon. Kumbaga, kaupay sa niya social cognitive theory. Sa niya theory. So, in a presentation he gave to the British Psychological Society in 2009, and this remarkably effective application of his work, Bandura ended with the following call to action. Global problems instill a sense of paralysis in people. They feel that there is little they can do to reduce such problems. The mantra, think globally, act locally, is an effort to localize the global. Our global applications increase the scale and scope of social cognitive theory in promoting personal and social changes. They illustrate how a collective effort, combining the expertise of different players, can have a worldwide impact of seemingly insurmountable problems. As society, we enjoy the benefits left by those before us who could collectively work for social changes that improve our lives. Our own collective efficacy will determine whether we pass on a habitable planet to our grandchildren and future generations. So, as you bring our knowledge and your personal influence to bear on saving our battered planet, may the efficacy force be with you. Bandura 2009. Wow! This exciting new collaborative work is a powerful illustration of how personality theory can frame solutions to global social problems. Self-efficacy is a clearly construct with far-reaching implications not only for our own personal lives but for collective actions. Given this, it is easy to see why Albert Bandura's theories continues to generate the impressive amount of research and application it does. So, ang Bandura theory talaga is kaupay naging global siya, naging sikat talaga ang social cognitive theory ni Bandura. Na tubtub yan na is kumbaga mga researcher kumbaga iralaga pinigin na impress sila because of this Bandura theory, and may dagap si Bandura mantra na think globally, act locally. Ini niya naging mantra sa niya theory. So, this is the critic of Bandura. Albert Bandura has evolved his social cognitive theory by a careful balance of two principal components: theory building, innovative speculation, and accurate observation. His theoretical speculations have seldom outdistanced his data but have been carefully advanced, only one step in front of observation. This scientifically sound procedure increases the likelihood that his hypothesis will yield positive result and that his theory will generate additional testable hypotheses. So, unuseful saan kan Bandura personality theory, like sa iba ng mga theory, rates on kumbaga an ability para ma-generate research. So, para ma-offer itself the falsification and para ma-recognize ang knowledge. So, in addition, this must serve as a practical guide sa action and to be internally consistent and parsimonious. So, kan Bandura gapon theory, kumbaga nag-generate ini thousand research studies ngan thus receive a very high rating on its capacity to generate research. So, si Bandura nga niya students, colleagues, nag-conduct sila dako na work for this. Pero ni ba nga mga researcher, pero mga ibang researcher gyapon had been attracted to the theory. Ang mga ibang mga researcher, kumbaga mas na-attract sila sa theory ni Bandura. So, Bandura may be the most meticulous writer of all personality theorists. His carefully constructed formulation lend themselves to the formation of numerous testable hypotheses. So, on the standards of falsifiability, we rate Bandura's theory high. Self-efficacy theory suggests that People's belief in their personal efficacy influence what courses of action they choose to pursue, how much effort they will invest in activities, how long they will persevere in the face of obstacle and failure experiences, and their resiliency following setbacks. So this statement suggests several areas of possible research that could lead a falsification of self-efficacy theory. So, on its ability to recognize knowledge, so, kan Bandura theory, naka-receive sin nataas na rating, damo nga mga findings sa psychology research, nag-organize ang social cognitive theory. So, the triadic reciprocal causation model is a comprehensive concept that offers a variable explanation of the accusation of most observable behaviors. The inclusion of three variables in this paradigm gives Bandura's theory more flexibility to organize and explain behavior than does Skinner's radical behaviorism, which relies heavily on environmental behaviors. So, how practical is Bandura's social cognitive theory? So, to the therapist, teacher, parents, or anyone interested in the accusation and maintenance of new behaviors, self-efficacy theory provides useful and specific guidelines. So, in addition to presenting techniques for enhancing personal and collective efficacy and for the efficient use of proxies, Bandura's theory suggests ways in which observational learning and modeling can be used to acquire behaviors. So, is the theory internal consistent? So, because Bandura's social cognitive theory is not highly speculative, it has a standing internal consistency. Bandura is not afraid to speculate, but he never ventures far beyond the empirical data available to him. The result is a carefully rigorously written and internal consistent theory. The fine criterion of a useful theory is parsimony. Again, Bandura's theory meets high standards. The theory is simple, straightforward, and encumbered by hypothetical or fanciful explanations. So let's move on to concept of humanity. So Bandura sees humans as having the capacity to become many things, and most of these things are learned through modeling. So if human learning were dependent on direct experiences or trial and error, it would be exceedingly slow, tedious, and dangerous. Fortunately, humans have evolved an advanced cognitive capacity for observational learning that enables them to shape and structure their life through the power of modeling. So, si Bandura liwat is natuod na ang tao is quite plastic and flexible. So, ang plasticity and flexibility in an essence of humanity sa naton basic nature. Kaya ang tao is nag-evolve sa neurophysiological mechanism para ma-symbolize ang nila experiences. Ang nila nature is nagmamark siya sa large degree sa flexibility. So, ang tao may capacity para ma-store ang past experiences nga magamit ang information para ma-chart ang future actions. So, Bandura says that people's capacity to use symbols provides them with a powerful tool for understanding and controlling their environment. So, ang tao giyap is may capacity para magamit symbol para ma-provide nira ang powerful tool para maintindihan nira nga makontrol nira environment. So, it enables them para ma-solve ang problems without resorting to inefficient trial and error behavior. para ma-imagine ang consequences sa nira action and para ma-set nira goals para sa nira kalugaringon. So ang tao ang capacity sa tao na gamit kay symbol para ma-provide ang powerful tool para ma-understand and ma-control environment. Ulit-ulit. And it enables them to solve problems without restoring the efficient trial behavior. And humans are goal-directed, purposive animals who can view the future and bestow it with meaning by being aware of the possible consequences of future behavior. Humans anticipate the future and behave accordingly in the present. So, ang human, nagbe-behave siya according to the present. So, ang future, di rin niya madidetermine ang behavior. Pero, ang cognitive representation, pwede siya maging powerful effect para sa present action. So, ang tao, nagsisit goals para sa niya kalugaringon. Anticipate the likely consequences of prospective actions. Nga nagsaselect siya nga naghihimo courses para sa niya action, likely to produce undesired outcomes and avoid the terminal ones. So although ang tao is basically goal-oriented talaga. So Bandura believes na may ada specific rather than general intentions and purposes. Ang tao di rin na motivated by a single master goal such as nag-strive la sila for superiority or self-accusation, pero ang multiplicity of goals is kumbaga danay nagdidistansya ngan naging proximate danay. So ini nga individual intention, however diri gap siya ordinarily anarchical. So nagpo-possess gyap some stability and order. So ang cognition, gintatagan ng tao sin capacity to para ma-evaluate ang consequences ngan ma-eliminate ang mga behavior na diri dapat ma-meet sa standards of conduct. So ang personal standard, therefore, naghatagap sila sa human behavior sa degree of consistency. Bisan ang behavior is naglalak sa master motivates para ma-guide iton. So, ang Bandura concept of humanity naman is more optimistic than pessimistic. Kay nag-hold ini siya sa people are capable of learning new behaviors throughout their lives. So, ang tao ko natuod si Bandura na kaya pa nila mag-learn sa new behaviors throughout sa nila kinabuhi. So, however, ang dysfunctional behavior nagpe-persist ini kay because of low self-efficacy or because they are perceived as being reinforced. So nevertheless, ini mga unhealthy behaviors diri kailangan ipadayon. Kay most disan mga tao may kapasidad na magbago by ginilimit nila productive behaviors para sa iba and ginagamit nila nga cognitive abilities para ma-solve ang problems. So, kan Bandura social cognitive theory naman, of course, nag-emphasize ini sa social factors more than biological ones. However, na-recognize ini sa genetic contributes para sa mga tao, variable in the triadic reciprocal quotient paradigm. But even within this model, cognition ordinarily gains ascendance. So biological factors become less important. Moreover, social factors are clearly more crucial to the other two variables, the environment and behavior. So, we rate Bandura's high on freedom versus determinism because si Bandura is natuod nga ang tao pwede mag-exercise sa large measure kung pwede makontrol their life and over their lives. So although ang tao is affected by both their environment and their experiences, with reinforcement may sila power para ma-mold ini nga two external condition. To some extent, ang people pwede niya manage and environmental conditions. So, that will shape future behavior can choose to ignore or augment previous experiences. So, ang human agency nagsuggest na ang tao may ada siya hataas na personal ngan collective efficacy um, and who make efficient use of proxies have a great amount of influence on their own actions. However, ang iba na tao is made of freedom than others kay more adept on regulating their own behavior. However, some people have more freedom than others because they are more adept of regulating their own behavior. So, Bandura, gindefine din ni Bandura ang freedom as the number of options available to people and the right to exercise them. So, personal freedom then is limited. It is restricted by physical constraints such as laws, prejudices, regulations, and the right of other people. So, in addition, personal factors such as perceived inefficacy and lack of confidence restrict individual freedom. So, on the issue of causality or the teleology, Bandura's position would be described as moderate. Human functioning is a product of environmental factors interacting with behavior and personal variables. Especially cognitive activity, people move with a purpose toward goals that they have set, but motivation exists in neither the past nor the future. It is contemporary. Although future events cannot motivate people, people's conception of the future can and does regulate present behavior. So, social cognitive theory gyapon na emphasize din unconscious ngan over unconscious determinants of behavior. So, ang self-regulation sa action, kumbaga nag-rely siya on self-monitoring, judgment, and self-reaction, all of which ordinarily conscious during the learning situation. So, ang tao, diri siya nagiging thoughtless pala during the learning processes. Makakahimo sila conscious judgment about sa reaction ngan makaka-affect ni sa environment. So, after ma-learn ngan ma-establish and motor learnings. So, magiging unconscious na sila. Ang tao diri na magiging aware sa nira action while nagdalakat, nakaon, or nagdadrive sa sasakyan. So, si Bandura liwat, he believes that division of biological and social factors is a false dichotomy. Although, ang tao, limited lang nila biological forces, pero may da sila remarkable plasticity. Ang nila social environment nag-aalaw sa ira para maging wide range and behavior. Apedidian ang paggamit sa iba na tao para maging models. So, each person's lives in a number of social networks and is thus influenced by a variety of people. So, modern technology in the form of the World Wide Web and the media facilitates the spread of social influences. So, because people have a remarkable flexibility and capacity for learning, vast individual differences exist among them. Bandura's emphasis on uniqueness, however, is moderated by biological and social influences, both of which contribute to some similarities among people. Today, thank you for listening, and as Bandura's mantra, think globally, act locally. Thank you very much.